one of the things I recommend, strongly recommend, to kind of make this life interesting, this blood control lifestyle, blood sugar control lifestyle, more appealing, is to learn about and try a lot of different ethnic flavors and ethnic recipes. And I found somebody who cooks named Sahil, who has a YouTube channel called Headbanger's Kitchen, because he's also in a heavy metal band, and it's just fantastic. But one of the things I've learned is you really got to stock up on what you need. I'm really happy to have reached the point where if I watch a YouTube video or pull up a recipe on the internet, I can be pretty confident that I have everything I need to make it. I don't need to go run to the store every time I see a new recipe. Right now I'm going to stick with sort of the Indian theme, not necessarily Indian, also Persian, but here are the spices, and I've kind of divided them out. Here are 4 spices that are commonly used that, I think most American households probably, stocked with this. These are kind of staples: garlic powder, chili powder, onion powder, oregano, things like that. You see a lot of that in ethnic recipes, and by no means is this exhaustive. It's just as an example. Up here, though, I've got a group of spices that I really certainly some of it I have heard of before, but I certainly didn't use commonly. I guess smoked paprika, I guess people use that, but turmeric is extremely important. Cumin, coriander. I have both coriander powder and coriander seeds because recipes tend to call for one or the other. And now we get really stuff that I had to order off the internet. Curry leaves. This gem, I had never heard of this before. The last few months. Garam masala is in a lot of curries and dishes like that. And this is called kasuri methi, or I suppose in English, dried fenugreek leaves. And this is another one of those that's really common in really good curries, authentic type of curries. Then we've got these types of things. Solid aromatics, I guess you'd call them, star anise and cloves, things like that can be ground up into things like this. I went on the internet. I wanted to figure out how to spice up my cauliflower rice and make it taste a little bit like Persian rice, and I found some information online for how to make Persian spice. And here, this is basically just a mix of other powders, but this I had to ground up a lot of stuff. But you can also combine these spices. This is tandoori masala. But masala is a word that sort of means, as far as I can tell, either a spice mixture or a spicy mix, even if it's wet ingredients that you use for cooking. Now, if you want to do something like this, and I've had to occasionally, because not just anise and cloves, but things like mustard seed and whole black pepper, you got to grind those down. So this comes in very handy as well. I'm not endorsing any particular brand, but I've got this grinder. I think it's designed mostly for shakes, but I don't use it for that, because this particular brand comes with something called a milling blade that you can use either to make, sort of a fine powder out of things like almonds, but you can also use this milling blade to mill spices and grind them down into a powder. So that can come in really handy. So I wanted to sort of go through that because I'm going to make a meal that involves using some of these spices. And again, you really, if you're going to do this successfully and enjoy it, and have the flexibility to make basically any recipe that you see, you're going to have to stock up on this stuff. And why not have a little more fun and buy some spice tins so your kitchen looks fancy. Hi, Lainey. Where are you going? Okay, back with dinner.
Okay, you start by prepping the chicken. Don't do what I did here. I cut the chicken into strips. I use chicken thighs, by the way. If you use chicken breast, you got to stop that. You can knock that off. Stop right now. They're not nearly as good. Chicken thighs are less expensive and they're also moister. They got some of that moist dark meat. They've got a little more fat on them, which usually will render off when they're cooked right. But you see, I'm cutting them into strips here. That didn't, as you'll see in a minute, that didn't work so well on the skewers, so cut them into cubes. Okay, obviously next it's time to make the marinade, which calls for butter. I think I had about a cup and a half there of butter. Um, Add some yogurt. I actually use something called Townhill, which is an almond milk yogurt. I don't necessarily recommend it. It doesn't quite have the same texture as real yogurt, but it did all right in this recipe. Then you start adding some spices, some seasonings. You got your salt, some coriander there, get a little bit more. Some chili powder. I dumped too much chili powder in here. I wound up scooping some out with a spoon. I edited that out and went and got myself a little measuring spoon so I wouldn't do that with all the rest of the spices. Live and learn. There's some cumin and some garam masala. I introduced that in the little spice bit. Now these are the cardamom seeds. They're little black seeds that come inside of a green pod. I broke the pods open to get the seeds out. They have a real interesting aroma, and I think they added some nice flavor to this. I probably should have put more, but it was kind of hard to get those out of the cardamom pods. What I've got in my hand now is the fenugreek leaves, or kasuri methi, and sprinkle a little of that into the mix. Mix, mix, mix. Tap, tap, tap. Okay. A little squeeze of lime for some acid, some acidity. Kind of learning about the balance of flavors, sweet, savory, acid, all that good stuff. Um, and then finally, I'm sure this will be a little controversial, but this is an all natural product as far as I can tell. But it was recommended in the video that I watched from Headbanger's Kitchen to add a little bit of red food coloring. If you're going to make tandoori or chicken taki, if you order that in a restaurant, there's going to be some food coloring in it. That's how they get that nice red color. So just go ahead and mix up that marinade, get that ready. Make sure everything is all incorporated, and of course, uh, next step is go ahead and add that chicken in there. A nice fat.
Stir it all up. That's nicely coated. And you let that marinate for a couple hours. In the fridge.
Here you see me struggling with getting these strips onto the skewer. That's why I'm saying, please, if you're gonna do this recipe, don't do what I did. That was really dumb to cut it into little strips. I don't even know if I was what I was thinking. If I was thinking, you want to cut it into nice cubes so you don't have to do this. Try to stab these little tiny strips of chicken. That turned into a real pain. Now, after I put all the chicken on the skewers, there was some leftover marinade slash gunk in the bowl. I don't want to waste any of that, so I put some olive oil in there. You also want to get some olive oil on the skewers, because one of the points of this kind of lifestyle, and especially if you want to be in ketosis, is to make sure your body is consuming enough fat so that it continues to burn fat for fuel. So these chicken skewers without any oil or any other kind of healthy fat on them probably don't fit the bill. Go ahead and put the skewers in an air fryer. This thing has been an absolute godsend. You don't need an air fryer for keto because there's nothing wrong with deep frying in keto, but I just find that this cooks better, especially chicken and chicken wings. I'm going to make some wings later on in another video. Uh, but you go ahead and lay those in an air fryer. Um, Go ahead and put that uh, oil marinade mixture on the chicken. Get that on there to help crisp it up right when it cooks. And again, add a little bit of healthy fat to this. The original recipe didn't call for this, but I thought I would just do it on my own. First of all, not to waste, and second of all, again, to get those macros, they're called macronutrient levels, where they're supposed to be. It has certain amounts of fat, protein, and very limited carbs. I put it in the air fryer for about 18 minutes, and I cooked it at 395 degrees. I had it preheated to 395, and this is how it came out. I wish I'd gotten a little better picture of this. My lighting was off, but they look a little black there. They were actually just nicely kind of pink brown. And I served it with a little bit of slaw. There's some yogurt and cream cheese and spices and a little bit of sliced up shallots in that, I guess you call it a little coleslaw type of concoction. And let me tell you, this whole thing was delectable. It was just absolutely delicious. Highly recommended. I hope you'll try it. I hope you'll like the video and subscribe and all that good stuff. And I'll see you next time.